Most people think their future is destroyed by big failures, big mistakes, or big disadvantages. But in my experience, the real destruction comes quietly. It comes from the habits you repeat without even noticing. When I was young, I used to believe my biggest enemy was the world outside, competition, lack of money, lack of connections. But over time, I learned something much more painful. The real enemy was living in my own mind. For many years before Alibaba existed, I carried the habit of doubting myself. Every idea I had, I questioned it. Every opportunity, I hesitated. I did not fail because the idea was bad. I failed because the habit of hesitation made me slow, weak, and afraid. And the dangerous thing about these hidden habits is that they look harmless. You tell yourself, it's just a small delay, or I'm just thinking, or maybe later. But every time you repeat them, they grow roots inside you. Most people don't lose because they are not smart or not talented. They lose because they let invisible patterns control their life. A habit is like a tiny thread. Alone, it seems useless. But once you repeat it every day, those threads become a rope strong enough to drag your future in the wrong direction. And the worst part? You don't even notice it's happening. I often tell entrepreneurs, your biggest competitor is not another company, it's your own behavior. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, but the opposite is also true. Bad habits are the bridge between comfort today and regret tomorrow. The world only remembers doers, not talkers. And the silent saboteurs, the habits you ignore, make sure you stay a talker forever. Success doesn't begin with what you add to your life. It begins with what you remove. And the first thing to remove is the unconscious behavior that is stealing your potential every single day. When people ask me what truly destroys a person's future, they expect complicated answers. Lack of money, lack of knowledge, lack of opportunity. But I always tell them the same thing: comfort. Comfort is the first enemy, and it is the deadliest. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they are comfortable enough not to try. Before Alibaba, I was a teacher. It was a stable job. I loved my students. My life was simple, predictable, safe, and that safety almost trapped me forever. I remember the moment I realized it, I was offered another teaching position. Better pay, better school, better title. Everyone around me said, "Jack, this is perfect. Why risk anything?" But deep down, I felt something dying inside me. The comfort was warm, but it was slowly killing my ambition. Comfort is tricky. It doesn't attack you. It lulls you. It whispers, "You're fine. You don't need to change. Don't make things harder." And once you listen, you lose urgency. And without urgency, there is no growth. If discipline is the bridge to success, then comfort is the wall blocking that bridge. Most people stay exactly where they are, not because they can't move forward, but because their comfortable habits convince them not to. Comfort teaches you to settle, to accept less, to repeat the same days until your future collapses into mediocrity. It's a prison made of soft pillows. I learned the hard way that progress never comes from the familiar. Every good thing in my life, Alibaba, failure, learning, came when I stepped into discomfort. The world only remembers doers, not dreamers who stayed comfortable. Your future cannot grow in the soil of comfort. You must be willing to disturb your own peace if you want something greater. Comfort is not a reward. It is a trap. And if you don't break it, it will quietly pull your future backward. Most people don't realize how much of their future is controlled by the people and emotions they refuse to let go of. I learned this the painful way. In my early years, I was surrounded by friends who complained every day. They laughed at my ideas, told me to be realistic, and reminded me constantly of how many times I had failed. I didn't understand it then, but I was emotionally attached to their approval, and that attachment was quietly destroying my future. Negative attachment is a habit. You get used to carrying old failures, toxic friendships, and outdated dreams like heavy bags on your shoulders. You tell yourself, it's not that bad, or I've known them for years, or maybe things will change. But the truth is simple. Nothing changes until you let go. Discipline may build your future, but emotional dependency destroys it. I remember the day I told one of my closest friends that I wanted to build something big one day. He laughed and said, "Jack, you can't even get a job at KFC. Wake up." That comment stayed with me for years, not because he was right, but because I allowed his voice to shape my thinking. That is the danger. When you carry negative attachments, you start to believe the limits others give you. Letting go is painful. Cutting ties with old comfort, old identities, and old voices feels like losing a part of yourself. But I discovered something powerful the moment I walked away. Your future begins the second you stop defending your past. You only move forward when you stop dragging dead weight behind you. Success requires emotional space. If you fill your mind with negativity, you leave no room for possibility. Winners create new environments. Losers stay loyal to the old ones that keep them small. It's not the world that blocks your opportunity. It's the attachments you refuse to release. Your future cannot grow if your hands are still holding yesterday. Procrastination is not just laziness. It's a silent, habitual thief that robs you of your future. I have seen so many young people, so many talented minds trapped by this invisible enemy. I too was guilty. I spent months waiting for the right timing, believing that opportunities would come when conditions were perfect. But the truth is, the perfect moment never arrives. Waiting becomes a habit, and every habit strengthens itself the more you obey it. I remember sitting in my small apartment thinking, maybe tomorrow, maybe next month, I'll start working on this idea for Alibaba. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and every day my dreams were quietly dying because I allowed delay to feel safe. Delay disguises itself as careful planning, as preparation, as thinking it through. But it is nothing more than fear wrapped in excuses. The more you delay, the more invisible chains tighten around your potential. Every minute you spend waiting is a minute someone else is using to get ahead. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishments, but procrastination is the bridge to regret. If you do not break the habit of delay, you will watch life pass by while your ideas remain in your mind, never taking shape in reality. The cure is uncomfortable. You must start before you feel ready. You must act even when conditions are imperfect. Every small step you take today dismantles the power of delay. Every action you take strengthens the bridge to your future. And when you do this consistently, delay no longer controls you, you control your own life. Remember, the world only rewards doers, not talkers. Stop waiting. Start now. Your future cannot survive the habit of delay. The habit of small thinking. Most people do not fail because they try too much. They fail because they never dare to dream big enough. Small thinking is a habit that quietly shapes your identity and limits your future. I have been there myself. Early in my career, I listened to doubters who told me to aim for what felt realistic, to stay in the safe lane, to avoid risks. At the time, I thought they were helping me, but in reality, their thinking was slowly shrinking my potential. Small thinking feels safe. It tells you this is enough or you shouldn't aim too high. You'll be disappointed. But it is a slow poison. The more you accept small limits, the more your vision shrinks, until one day you realize your dreams are no longer your own. They are borrowed from the fear of others. Every habit of underestimating yourself steals energy, ambition, and opportunity. I remember my early days trying to convince people to join me at Alibaba. Most laughed. They said, "Jack, China is too big, too complex, you can't do it." If I had listened to them completely, I would have built nothing, and I would have limited myself to the average life they imagined. The habit of thinking small had to be broken, piece by piece, thought by thought. Breaking this habit requires courage. You must challenge every limitation you internalize, question every voice that whispers enough, and refuse to settle for what feels comfortable. Think bigger than your environment, bigger than your past failures, bigger than anyone says you can. The moment you consistently practice thinking beyond limits, you expand your possibilities and your future begins to match your true potential. Remember, your dreams do not grow in small soil. You must cultivate them in vast open spaces of bold imagination and fearless ambition. Fear is not just an emotion. It can become a habit, a silent routine that eats away at your future. I know this because I lived it. After being rejected from KFC, Harvard, and countless investors, I could have easily accepted that I wasn't good enough. Every no could have been a reason to stop, a signal that I should quit. But I noticed something dangerous. The more I avoided uncomfortable situations, the more fear multiplied inside me. Fear grows every time you feed it, and feeding it becomes a habit. Fear-feeding behavior is insidious because it disguises itself as caution. You tell yourself, maybe I'm not ready, or I don't want to embarrass myself. But in truth, You are practicing the habit of retreating, of shrinking your potential, of letting anxiety dictate your decisions. I realized that if I allowed fear to become a routine, I would never build anything of value. The world only rewards those who face fear and act despite it. I remember sitting in my small office thinking about taking risks to expand Alibaba. Every step felt dangerous. Every decision felt like it could lead to failure. But I learned that the moment I stopped feeding fear with hesitation, fear lost its control. Rejection became a teacher. Obstacles became exercises, and challenges became opportunities. Acting in spite of fear rewired my habits, and each brave step made the next one easier. Your future is being stolen by fear if you do not break the habit. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce the cycle of limitation. But when you act despite fear, you grow stronger, smarter, and more capable. Habits are the architects of your destiny, and fear-feeding behavior builds only walls, not bridges. The Edison wake-up story, we all know the story of Thomas Edison and his 1,000 failures before inventing the light bulb. But most people miss the real lesson. Edison didn't let failure become a habit that defined him. He didn't broadcast every mistake. He didn't wait for praise or validation. He kept working quietly, learning from each attempt and refining his method. If he had run from failure or treated it as a reason to quit, the world would never have had electric light. And this is exactly why hidden habits, like fear of failure, impatience, and distraction, can silently destroy your future if you let them. I think about Edison because his persistence mirrors the habits I had to develop in my own life. Early in Alibaba, every idea seemed too risky. Investors laughed, colleagues doubted, and every no felt like a wall. But I realized that success is not about avoiding failure. It's about breaking the habit of quitting too early. Every failure is a lesson, and every lesson is a step forward if you refuse to let it harden into a habit of fear or hesitation. What most people don't understand is that habits are more powerful than talent. Edison succeeded because persistence became automatic. Failure didn't discourage him, it fueled him. The habit of learning from mistakes, of moving forward quietly, is what separates those who achieve from those who watch their future slip away. We cannot let fear, impatience, or distraction become daily routines that shape our destiny. So remember, the world only rewards those who persist while others falter. Break the habit of quitting too early. Embrace failure as a teacher, not an enemy. Let your results, like Edison's light, speak louder than your fears. Success is born in the quiet persistence of those willing to outlast every hidden habit that threatens their future. Comparison seems harmless, almost natural, but it is one of the most destructive habits you can develop. I know this because I spent years measuring my progress against others, watching their successes, and feeling small when I fell short. Every time I compared myself to someone else, I wasted energy I could have invested in my own growth. Comparison is a thief. It steals focus, ambition, and confidence, quietly eroding your potential while you think you are just assessing yourself. The danger is that comparison disguises itself as motivation. You tell yourself, if they can do it, I should do it too, or I need to catch up. But most of the time, it creates insecurity instead of action. I remember seeing other entrepreneurs achieve what I thought was impossible, and for a moment, I doubted my own abilities. That doubt could have become a habit, a repeated pattern that limited my vision. Instead, I learned to turn the mirror inward and focus only on my own journey. Breaking this habit requires awareness and discipline. You must catch yourself every time you start measuring your worth against others and redirect that energy to action. Your path is unique, and success does not come from imitation. It comes from persistence, innovation, and courage. Comparison not only wastes your time, but also shapes your identity around someone else's achievements rather than your own. The truth is, your future is built by what you create, not by what others do. Stop the habit of comparison, and you reclaim your focus, your confidence, and your power. When you measure yourself against your own potential instead of someone else's accomplishments, you free yourself to grow exponentially. Excuses start small, almost invisible, but they can quietly take over your life and define who you are. I learned this the hard way. Early in my career, I would sometimes tell myself I don't have enough resources, or the timing isn't right. At first, these excuses felt harmless, even logical. But over time, I realized that repeating excuses became a habit, and habits shape identity. Before I could achieve anything, I had to stop identifying myself with limitations I invented. Excuses are a way of surrendering control without admitting it. When you say, "I can't," because you are handing your power to circumstances, to other people, or to fear itself. I remember meetings with potential investors where I almost allowed excuses to dictate my pitch, thinking, maybe they won't understand. That thinking, if repeated, becomes part of who you are, a story you tell yourself instead of the story you create. And if your identity is built on excuses, your future is already shrinking. The secret is that removing excuses is not punishment. It is liberation. Every time you confront an excuse and choose action instead, you reinforce the habit of responsibility, courage, and persistence. Excuses die only when you refuse to let them define you. When you demand that your actions, not your fears or rationalizations, tell your story. The world respects doers, not talkers. And those who eliminate excuses become unstoppable because they no longer allow manufactured barriers to dictate their destiny. By the time 2026 arrives, eliminating excuses is no longer optional. It is mandatory. For anyone who wants to transform potential into achievement, your excuses are silent enemies. The moment you remove them, you reclaim your time, energy, and life. Your identity becomes one of action, not avoidance, and that identity becomes the engine of your future success. Your future is not some distant, abstract idea. It is the product of the habits you nurture every single day. I only truly understood this when I began to examine my own life and remove the invisible forces that were quietly holding me back. Every habit of self-doubt, fear, procrastination, and comparison I allowed to survive was like a chain around my potential. The moment I consciously began eliminating these destructive patterns, I started to feel what real growth could be. Liberation begins with removal, not accumulation. It begins by letting go of what weakens you, not just adding what seems helpful. I remember sitting in my small apartment in Hangzhou, thinking about all the doors that had closed to me, all the investors who said no, all the opportunities I almost missed. And then I realized the real limits weren't outside, they were inside. The habits I had allowed to form over years were quietly determining my destiny. Once I began breaking them, every rejection, every failure became a lesson, every no a stepping stone rather than a wall. I became free to pursue the vision that was uniquely mine without the heavy weight of invisible chains. This is the final warning I want to leave with you. Your future will be destroyed or built by what you choose to keep inside yourself. Every destructive habit you allow to survive is a hidden enemy, quietly stealing your potential. But when you remove them, when you consciously delete fear, excuses, comparison, comfort, and negativity, you open the door to growth, creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Your true potential does not wait for circumstances. It waits for you to remove the barriers that are already within you. When those barriers die, your future finally wakes up.